to a alphabetic podcast with Jason Christoff, which I will link below. Very good podcast, as it always is with Jason and the guys. They're talking again specifically about mind control, which is his specialty. There's a phrase that he mentioned, dethroning the rulers, that piqued my interest and I wanted to speak about. Dethroning the rulers, which in a broader context would be the elites, the parasite and predator class, the psychopaths and these families, institutions, whatever it might be, the extremely small group that essentially runs the world and owns the world. And, they're the self-professed protectors of the realm, I guess. And maybe not all of them are psychopathic and sociopathic and evil, but based on what we're seeing out in the world, based on what we see in the repetitive narratives and cultural, programming, social engineering, based on that kind of evidence, it would seem that those who are in the forefront or kind of running the show are leaning into the nefarious and the negative side of things. And I've spoken in different ways about this in the past. So make of that what you will. But I wanted to just speak to the idea that it's even possible to dethrone the rulers, as it were. When you consider that the apparatus that's involved, that for over 120 years at least, has been operating in such a way that has masterfully encoded a certain version of history, that has masterfully erased much of the other ways that we might be able to find what's real and true about our past and about humanity and about our purpose here. The system, whatever it is, the infrastructure, the apparatus that has masterfully, for generations, been indoctrinating, programming, conditioning, and mind controlling and propagandizing intellectuals and idiots alike, that has been masterfully co-opting, distorting, and inverting, reality for, as I was saying, over 120 years in this last particular, sequence, this last particular era of modernity. That system that instigated, perpetuated, and produced events such as the world wars and all the other forever wars and conflicts and manufactured crises that have happened since then. That system that has masterfully imposed itself upon all the things that we consider to be important infrastructurally, socially, and culturally, such as the arts, finances, education, politics, industry, commerce, and food, what have you. This system, these controllers, this alleged people, entities, ideas sitting on the throne, the rulers, as you might want to call them, have been doing that effectively for far longer, of course, than just this past century and 120 something years, right? This is all cyclical. It's not like it's just started in our time, in our era. So the idea that we're going to dethrone and make any sort of positive impact on those structures that are well ingrained and well entrenched is, suspect, is folly, is perhaps even arrogant. Naturally, it's not impossible. We're just talking probabilities, and I'm, speculating here and sharing an opinion, a perspective, because there's a lot in the truther community, if you want to call it that, even in the religious, faith-based communities and such, that are constantly speaking about the evil and standing up against the machine and exposing these things, as I have done for most of my life, as many other people have certainly done better than me, who are far more well-educated in the matters and have gone down the rabbit holes and created books, documentaries, articles, and the like to expose and shed light on these things, because that is what we are motivated, inspired, obsessed about. Truth, authenticity. But the idea that we're going to unseat these ancient influences, ancient forces, which are essentially a mirror, the opposite of what it is to be operating in the light, the counterforce that is necessary for our existence, the idea that we're going to unseat this influence and that all is going to be happy and free and liberated, and that we are finally, going to take back those controls of whatever we imagine we need to actually be controlling in the first place. I think there's a certain convoluted notion here that has no basis in reality, because we kind of need the resistance. Any muscle for it to grow stronger needs to be broken and remade and used and honed, right? Just like our tools of discernment and picking apart these narratives and critical thinking, using logic, rhetoric, rationality, using observational science to discern what is real and true about our world, what is real and true about us, the reasons why we're here and what we're doing here in the first place, and the reasons for these so-called rulers. And, this whole archetype of the hero and the idea that we're going to rise up and stand up and deprogram enough people, awaken enough people to move the needle, to shift things such that we'll be able to unseat these rulers, that will be able to shift the paradigm enough on a scale across civilization, and that we're going to achieve that without some sort of massive repercussion and massive resistance, right? As I was saying, and in the beginning here, is that you have generations of people programmed, conditioned, brainwashed, right? So anytime you're making any sort of positive, significant momentum, they're going to stick the mob on you. They're going to alter the repetitive messaging in the mainstream to shut you down, to block you, to threaten you, to arrest you, to put you in prison, to sue you, to use anything within the system, anything available to them to shut down the messaging, to shut down the counter narrative, to shut down the dissidents. And we've seen this play out in multiple different ways in recent generations, especially over the last century, right? Especially in Europe and other countries in Asia, and, based on what might be real and true about certain histories, which is tough to discern and discover. I spoke about this and explored this idea a little bit in some recent GPT chats. I can't remember the specific name of them now, but it's in the recent ones relevant to this particular posting of this video. And feel free to go and have a look, talking about specific times such as 2001, 2008, 2020. It's related to the banking and these inflection points. But it's also related on a grander scale to these spellcasting moments where they captured the world mind, the collective consciousness, to instill a certain paradigm, belief, ideology, whatever it is, to shut down any and all resistance and to charge the mob again with a certain mindset, with a certain belief system, right? And we saw this most recently in 2020 when the whole world was essentially shut down and the repetitive messaging was, just think about it. And you can remember for yourself. I don't need to go into specifics, but it was particularly extreme and particularly effective, because not only did they cast the spell across wider civilization and the collective consciousness, they concurrently shut down any and all counter narratives, any and all truth speak, any and all dissidents, such as myself and other people, and especially people like Jason. And he talks about this in that podcast as well, this spellcasting and how things in 2020, the entire system was weaponized against us and turned against humanity. And for the most part, the vast majority, the masses, were completely caught unaware and utterly captured into this spell. And once that spell was cast, slowly, a year or two later, we were allowed to open our social media accounts. We were allowed to start sharing these documentaries, articles, books, and things again. Now, today in 2025, we can say essentially whatever we want because the spell was cast. The vast majority still believe in a certain way. Wealth was transferred. A lot of people were erased from existence and killed off. And going back and back and back, you'll see this history, this historical pattern playing out. 2001 was another one that was similar. And again, I've discussed this in different ways in various chats that I've had and other videos. But the point here, as I'm trying to explore in this particular talk is related to unseating these rulers. And if we think that we're going to be able to counter the system that is so well integrated in every institution and every industry and every commercial outlet, so integrated into our zeitgeist, into our consciousness, into how we learn about anything, how we are entertained, the music, all of the inputs that we are getting about things that we are most concerned about, precious and protective about: family, health, finances, safety, security, all of these things. All of these words you'll see as I'm saying such a phrase. And when I say something like safe and effective, what does that bring up to you? Any recent memories, any ideas about the politicians and the shills and the cowards and the psychopaths who were repeating endlessly, safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, stay at home, isolate, etc., right? That was the spell. Did you fall for it? Did you join the mob? Were you caught up in that inversion of reality? Do you think you'll be able to resist the next one? Do you think you've learned enough, that you've awoken, that you've developed those muscles of discernment and authenticity and understanding what is real and true and genuine about this world? Do you think you will be able to resist and overcome and see it the next time? Further to that, it doesn't have to be a big event, right? With our exposure to media and social media and screens and this fake two-dimensional reality that we're staring at, such as this stupid little screen. They're useful, they're tools, but they are not reality, right? I can only express ideas in a certain limited fashion based on my experience, based on my ability to use language and to convey and converse in a certain way, which may or may not resonate with you or those you care about, which is why I try and link to resources and other experts, articles and things that spurred these particular videos that I'm making, the related or mentioned type articles and podcasts, as I mentioned right at the beginning of this talk. There's all sorts of small ways, the slow drip poisons that are sprinkled clear across our society, right? Clear across institutions, especially academia, entertainment, and the things that are responsible for inputting ideas into our minds, into our consciousness, advertising campaigns, political campaigns, and the like. So it doesn't have to be these big inflection points like 2020, 2001, and otherwise. But those are the major, turning points. Those are the major events orchestrated years in advance for specific purposes. But in the meantime, are you more aware now and more discerning about the little poisons and the little toxicities that are being introduced into your field? Are you more aware of and able to think critically about everything that's being on offer? Because these major inflection points are traumatic and extreme, right? They knock everyone for a loop. They knock everyone out of their patterns in an effort to establish a shift in your paradigm, a shift in your perspective, a shift in your belief system, and to inject, quite literally, new ideas and chemicals and toxins into your body, into your mind, into your spirit. So if you overcame that, if you withstood that, and since those particular events happened, since 2020, have you become better? Have you educated yourself more? Have you been able to discern more how these things are happening all the time in all aspects of life? Have you put on, different lenses to be able to see things in a different way, the truth and reality to see through the veil, through the spell casting, through the narrative control, through the mind control, right? All I'm saying here is that if we want to have these big ideas, and if we want to join up with the crowd that is trying to unseat these rulers, as it were, we better think twice. Because it's very easy to get caught up in the excitement of these things. It's very easy to jump on board with almost a cult and these specific, passionate, emotionally charged beliefs and ideas, because they do harm. They hurt us. They hurt the people we love. They infuse and invert and pervert the world around us. They make things unnecessarily difficult in certain aspects of life. They control, certain narratives, and they force upon us certain ideas and stories and narratives through our entertainment, our education, and otherwise, as I've been describing. They're forcing us to try and think in a certain way. So the whole idea of the resistance and standing against this thing and not having to constantly compromise and accommodate nonsense and stupidity and the parasitic and predatory nature, that's difficult enough. So if the idea is to unseat the rulers and to go after these influences that are at the top and that are ancient and that are well versed and well integrated and entrenched into all the systems of the world, what's your intention? What's your end goal? What are you actually trying to achieve with that? And what do you think you're going to be able to achieve? Because nothing changes in the grand scheme until we can first change within ourselves. And I've said this many times, and you're probably well aware of it, even as I say that. It's probably triggering something in you, that realization, that remembrance. Nothing can change out in the world until you shift how you look at the world. And until you're willing to shift change your own paradigm, change your own perspective, reprogram yourself, and to dispel and cancel out and negate and remove all the spells that have been cast that are currently playing out in your own psychology, emotionality, spirituality, in your own energetic field. It's quite arrogant to think that you're going to change anything out into the world because you're simply projecting. You're projecting that pain, that disempowered idea. You're projecting that frustration, anxiety, fatigue, anger, a whole lot of anger, especially in the younger generation and the kids that had to grow up through 2020 to 2025 and all that introduced into their lives and completely disrupted normalcy, especially if you're in the public and the public education system. It was quite brutal. And that is something that your children, if you have them, if they grew up through those times, will have to be addressed because they probably haven't gotten over that. They probably have certain elements of PTSD playing out in their life. They might be leading into substances, what have you, right? Coping mechanisms. So be there for them, talk to them about these things, but also understand that you were dramatically affected by these events as well. And so through that process, there will be healing, catharsis, unveiling, revealing, and releasing of those energies, right? Don't hold on to these things. Don't hold on to that anger and set it aside. Don't use it as fuel to, think vindictive and vengeful thoughts, because they're the ones with the guns. They're the ones with the assets, resources, control of the entire thing. That's not the point. You're not going to solve that or fix that or tear it down, something that's ancient. Unless, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying consider the force involved. Consider the vastness of that which you are trying to counter and create momentum against, and consider all the resources at their disposal. They can at any moment set the mob against you and again capture the audience, capture the minds of millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people who aren't educated in a similar way, who aren't aware, who aren't even capable of thinking in such ways, who are aligned politically, left or right or whatever you want to call it. They're captured into the narrative machine. They're captured into the idea of politics or democracy or for the better good. They're captured by ideas such as safe and effective, right? They're captured easily by these emotional, simple, basic, ground level things. And at any time, the system that can be used to weaponize them against the likes of you and me, right? So just consider why you're going about it that way. Pick your battles and just be wise about how you want to go about these things. You need to be calm. You need to be almost unemotional about it, because that righteousness can get you in trouble. That self-righteousness especially can be weaponized against you. If you have the audacity to believe that you're going to go after and unseat these rulers, as it were, to dethrone them. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying understand what you're getting into and respect what it is. You are, of course, the ultimate power. You, within us, we are the immortals, right? We do have that unlimited creative spark and access to whatever it is, that architecture and framework, that energy, that non-physical, that inertia, that however you want to describe it for yourself, that spark that animates you, that soul presence, that fractal of the all that you have access to. You came here with a specific to-do list. You came here with a specific sort of idea of what you wanted to achieve and experience, and you're not going to get it all done, but that's not why you came here, right? So consider if you're going to get caught up in certain movements and ideas, and if it's counter-narrative, or if you're just oblivious and happy to go along to get along, it doesn't matter. You're not going to be judged either way, right? But consider where you're going to put your energies and how you're going to utilize the very short time that you have here in this particular life, and just have a respect and understanding and appreciation for what you might be trying to fight against, because that which we resist persists. And this works on the micro and the macro, right? So just be smart about it, be wise about it, be unemotional about it, be lawful, naturally lawful about it, because that which is natural and organic is working on your behalf. You stand for the light, for the truth, for what's authentic. That's the real story. Everything else is a fabrication. Everything else is put there for you to decide if you want to tear it down, dethrone whatever, if you want to fight or resist it in any way, or simply frame it and understand it. That's fabricated, that's fake, it's manufactured. It cannot harm me, ever. What is fundamental and real about you will never be harmed by it. Okay, now what? Choice is up to you. Have a good one.
It's been coming down every other day, but they tell me we are in drought season. That's not my story, not my reality. No matter what you force my eyes to see, and the sky is falling right on top of me, but they tell